Dan Dickau here for the Bulldog broadcast on the Field of 68 Media Network. Um, Interesting week, mixed bag of reactions if you look at Gonzaga fans to how they played in the Bahamas, as well as mixed bag of reactions to the analysts across college basketball. Gonzaga going 1-2 at the Battle for Atlantis, lost the opening round game against Virginia. Don't need to go into too many of the nuts and bolts, as I'm sure as a Gonzaga fan, you watched the game, you probably read the recaps. We're a few days removed from that, but I think the one big thing to look at is um, end of game situations. Gonzaga didn't close. They haven't been in a ton of close games up till now. They've been in control throughout most of the games. Even if you look at, Arizona State, I think they won by 8. They controlled that game. You look at the San Diego State game on the road in that environment, they controlled that game. So there wasn't anything with having to make big plays in big possessions when it mattered most. And this was the first time Gonzaga was put in that position. And West Virginia made the bigger plays in the bigger moments than Gonzaga did that night. There was also the confusion on the substitution availability of Ryan Nemhart when they pulled him out during the free throw and wasn't able to bring him back in. So that's one of those things in the rule book that unfortunately, every 2 years in college basketball, they make a couple different adjustments in regards to what the rules are and when you can sub and how those subs can work on free throw situations as well as timeout situations. So I think that's a learning experience. I was shocked that that happened. I don't expect that to happen again. But it is what it is. West Virginia, to be honest, made the bigger plays down the stretch throughout that game. Good bounce back win against Indiana, where they were in control of the game the entire time. They did not allow Mbako or Miles Rice to really have much of an impact on the game. The only Indiana Hoosier that had any kind of impact on the game was Umar Ballo, former Zag. He played really well. I think he finished with 24 points, but his points weren't overly impactful in regards to the flow of the game, having an impact on the game. For the most part, Gonzaga was single coverage. They just kind of dared him to score. I don't want to say allowed him to go to work on the low block, but they weren't concerned about his passing ability or his ability to get others involved. So good win there. Followed it up with a game against Davidson where this Davidson team is, in my opinion, they're going to be a really good team in the A10. They're gonna surprise some people once they get into league play. But athletically, size-wise, Gonzaga just outmatched them to finish out the win in the Bahamas. So that's a quick recap on that. Obviously, we want to thank our sponsors. McGilvery Environmental. Please check them out. Kip and his crew do a phenomenal job in regards to construction, whether it's Western Montana, Northern Idaho, Eastern Washington. You have a need with environmental construction, cleaning up of sites, building of roads, retaining walls, you name it. That is your go-to in McGilvery Environmental. So thank you for their support. Also want to spotlight Shoot 360. They're a corporate franchise. There's over 30 locations in the United States. They are expanding at a rapid rate. There is one in Spokane. Feel free to check out shoot360spokane.com if you have kids, grandkids that are interested in youth basketball. Phenomenal training facilities. But again, couple other sponsors are looking to jump on board. If you are a business owner that has interest in spotlighting your business endeavors and efforts, please reach out. We would love to spotlight you on the Bulldog broadcast. So again, thank you to McGilvery Environmental. Check them out if you have needs in that area. So to continue on, you look at, we talked about the Battle for Atlantis. So the new rankings come out. Gonzaga slides to number 7 in the AP. They go from 3 to 7. Not a huge slide considering what UConn did. They go 0 for 3 down in Maui at the Maui shootout and the Maui Invitational. And so they slide from 2 all the way to 25. Obviously, if you've been following college basketball, you saw the meltdown of Danny Hurley on the sidelines. Um, wasn't a good look for UConn, wasn't a good look for him. But what you have to look at is that's the passion that he coaches with day in, day out. Practice, shoot around, you're going to get the same Danny Hurley in regards to the fire each time out. Now, I will say understanding of when to temper it just a little bit in the big moment so you don't cost your team a game is something that I'm sure he's going to reflect upon. But when you just look at X's and O's and basketball philosophy and implementing it to his program, he's at the top of the list in regards to other coaches across the country. So Gonzaga's at 7. Not much unexpected in regards to the top two teams after you saw how Kansas continues to play, as well as Auburn really made an impression on myself and a lot of other people just because of how dominant they were in Maui. So those are the top two. Gonzaga's sitting at 7. The interesting thing, though, is you look at the net rankings came out for the first time. And again, if you remember the net rankings, your games are broken into 4 different quads, quad 1, 2, 3, and 4. And really, what you're looking at and what the NCAA tournament selection committee looks at is how many quad 1s and 2s have you played and how have you performed in those games? And so that's one of the reasons you see a lot of these power conference teams wanting to move to a longer conference schedule, because if you're a power conference, a Big 12, a Big 10, SEC, etc., you're wanting to load up with quad 1s and quad 2 opportunities because the selection committee a lot of times will look at, well, they have 10 quad 1 wins versus maybe a mid-major that has 3 quad 1 wins. And so if you kind of look at it big picture wise, well, of course, the power conference schools are going to have more chances because they continue to play each other and they beat up on each other, and that allows them more opportunities for those quad 1s and quad 2s. Like it or don't like it, that's kind of one of the criteria that the committee looks at. I wish that there would be more value placed on a win-loss record in your league. I would prefer to take a second place team out of, say, a Missouri Valley Conference or a third place team out of the A10 as opposed to the 12th place team in the Big Ten. Because now you're looking at the Big Ten with, I think it's 18 teams. We might be looking at 12 teams out of the Big Ten in there, and I find that not right. But the net rankings, as again I said, came out today. Gonzaga sits at 3 in the net rankings. Tennessee is number 1. Auburn is number 2. Gonzaga 3. Duke 4. And then a bit of a surprise out of the ACC, Pittsburgh sitting at 5 in the net rankings. A couple things that I think are going to impact Gonzaga's KenPom and net rankings throughout the year is if Arizona State continues to play at the level that they're playing, that's going to look like a better and better win as the season goes along. Same thing with San Diego State. That win, because they are now ranked in the AP as well, I believe they're 24. That win is going to look better and better as the season goes on. And, when you look at San Diego State, after Gonzaga beat them, they go to the Players Era Invitational, which was that NIL tournament down in Vegas, and they played really well. And you're seeing now some of those guys get comfortable with the offensive attack that Dutcher wants to have, but you're seeing the same defensive focus presence that they become known for, and they gave Gonzaga some problems with at times that day. But back to Gonzaga, you're looking at a team that's sitting at 7-1, 7th in the AP. KenPom, they're first in offense, 15th in defensive efficiency. Those are numbers that are going to make you think, hey, this team's got a legitimate title shot. This team has a legit Final Four path if they continue to improve. Their net's sitting at 3. So this team has done what they've needed to do to kind of live up to those early season expectations. But now we get into a huge 2-week stretch, and it's a 2-week stretch that really only has 2 games. So you get back from the Bahamas, you get a chance to reacclimate, get yourself in practice mode where clean up a lot of the things that maybe you weren't happy with as a staff, where when you had a chance to play 3 games in 3 days and you don't necessarily have that individual game preparation that you're used to, but you can go back and break down film and work on some of those things that maybe slipped in game 2 or game 3 that you know you're going to need against the next 2 opponents who are really good, but also moving forward the rest of the season. And when you look at the next 2 opponents who I said are really good, you're talking about a really good Kentucky team. They have really moved up. They're top 10 now in the rankings. Mark Pope, who you probably know and remember from his time as the BYU head coach, is now at Kentucky. He's got a plethora of talented transfers that have blended in really well together. And I think one of the reasons they've blended in really well together is if you look back and see how BYU played under Mark Pope, was they really spaced the floor. They played with a lot of pace. They had a ton of emphasis on getting shooters open and giving them space and confidence to shoot from 3. And that's exactly what you're seeing now at Kentucky. They really want to push the ball up the floor. They really want to get you spread defensively. They want to look for 3s, and they do it in a number of different ways. They do it in dribble handoffs. They do it some in pick and rolls. They do a lot of split actions where ball goes in one direction and then 2 offensive players come together, put the defense in a bind. Maybe you get a back cut or a curl cut and then a pop. Maybe you get a straight cut and then a basket cut. So they do a really good job with those split actions with quick decisions, and then they're decisive if they're going to hit the cutter or if they're going to hit the 3-point shooter, and those 3-point shooters have an absolute green light to let it fly. But again, to go back to the transfers for Kentucky, they got some really good ones in the portal. The 2 names that probably Gonzaga's fans are most aware of are Jackson Robinson, who followed Mark Pope and staff from BYU to Kentucky. He's been playing pretty well this year. And then the other one that a lot of people will remember if you're based on the West Coast would be Lamont Butler. 4 years at San Diego State, got them to the national title game 2 seasons ago. Tremendous addition in the transfer portal for Mark Pope, but he did a good job with getting other guys in the portal. Kobe Brea, a really good versatile wing from Dayton. And then you look at a couple of the other guys that are having impactful seasons, Amari Williams and Otega Owe. Those 2 in particular, I think, is who Gonzaga has to really do a good job on when they play in Seattle on December 7th, which is upcoming on Saturday. Williams is terrific on the glass. He can do a great job anchoring your defense on the interior. He's active, he's long, he's physical. And then when you look at Owe, he's about 6'4", 6'5", but very, very active, very physical, really good on the glass. I wouldn't pin him necessarily as a knockdown shooter, but he's going to keep you honest, at least from the outside. But I think for Gonzaga, the key is to get off to a good start. And the reason I say this is because as I record this Tuesday morning, this will probably get released on Wednesday morning. Kentucky has just yet to play a road game. They're going to play Tuesday night, the 3rd, at Clemson in a road game. So I would imagine road game, go back to Lexington, practice on Thursday, fly to Seattle on Thursday afternoon would be my guess. I don't know if they would go straight from Clemson, South Carolina, all the way to Seattle, but you never know. But the reason I say Gonzaga needs to get off to a good start is because Kentucky hasn't played a road game yet. The only game away from Rupp up till this point, before they play at Clemson and then the neutral site game in Seattle against Gonzaga, has been a neutral site game on the road against Duke. And that Duke was a Champions Classic 2-game event in Atlanta. I wouldn't say it was partial to Kentucky crowd. I wouldn't say it was a partial to Duke crowd. It was just one of these events that college basketball fans, whoever you watch, goes to the events. The other game that night would have been Kansas and Michigan State. So you weren't necessarily going to have an on the road feel going into a opponent's gym. Now I would imagine Gonzaga in Seattle is going to have a very pro Gonzaga crowd. I mean, you look, Kentucky's got one of the best fan bases. They're going to travel really well. But I don't know how many are going to get out all the way to Seattle for that game on the 7th. So for Gonzaga, you got to get off to a good start. You got to continue to get production from a number of guys. The guy I really want to see break through is Michael Ajayi. Showed some more positive signs and some more positive flashes in the Bahamas, especially in game two against Indiana. But I think what you're seeing is a guy who had a big role at Pepperdine last year. You see all the talent in the world there. Is still kind of tiptoeing around exactly where his opportunities are going to come for Gonzaga. You see him really good on the glass, active, getting offensive rebounds. Did a nice job getting out in transition for a couple dunks down in the Bahamas. You haven't seen him shoot it great yet from the 3-point line, but I still think you're seeing a player that's kind of tiptoeing around, trying to figure out where his opportunities lie. And once he gets that figured out and he's comfortable in it, watch out because it just adds one more weapon. I mean, Gonzaga right now, 5 players are averaging in double figures. Ben Gregg is the 6th, who's averaging about 9.5 points per game, coming off a career high 24 against Davidson down in the Bahamas. So getting production from lots of guys. Graham Ike is leading the team in scoring right around 13.5 a game. It's kind of one of those things where you can kind of pencil in somebody's going to go for 18 to 22, and then you're going to get 4 guys right around that 10 to 14 mark. So the balance has been spectacular. I don't expect that to change, but the other reason that balance has been so balanced and even is Ryan Nembhard continues to play at an absolute elite level on the offensive end of the floor, finding guys, making plays for guys, averaging close to 10 assists on the season. His assist to turnover ratio, last I checked a couple days ago, was second in the first or second in the country, but over 6-1. And what you have to realize is any point guard at the college level, if you're 2-1 with your assist to turnover ratio, you're doing a great job taking care of the basketball, getting your team involved. If you're 2.5-1, that is that's elite. Once you start creeping into anything around the 4s, you're talking about very few mistakes, a rare mistake, always making the right play, always making the read that is putting your team in best position to get a bucket. And for it not to be 4, but 6 assists to 1 turnover, absolutely incredible what he's done to start the season. I'm just going to put this out there. If Gonzaga continues to win and say they are, top 5 AP at the end of the season, win the West Coast Conference League title, at least get to the conference tournament title, which is normally when those All-American awards are voted on. If he continues to play at the level he's playing at, he's a first-team All-American. I mean, there are other good point guards across the country right now, but to put up the numbers he's putting up is bonkers when you think about it. So that is something to keep an eye on and gradually track as the season goes on. The other thing that I wanted to quickly just take a look at, with this episode, and I apologize, was hoping to get a Kentucky assistant coach on. Just the time differences with their practice schedule and then their travel schedule just didn't allow it to happen this time. But when you look at the landscape of college basketball, and I've said this over the last month or so since really started seeing teams, live as opposed to reading the preseason publications. There's 8 to 10 teams that are Final Four contenders, and Gonzaga is right in that mix. And of those teams, each one of them probably has a claim to say we are a national title contender because this season of college basketball, and I think a lot of it has to do with the transfer portal and teams getting experienced, valuable players. I think a lot of it has the NIL players maybe at a lower level who exceeded projections earlier in this career, transferred up, and they're coming in already having had success at the college level. So then the acclimation to a higher level doesn't necessarily take as long. But again, there's 7, 8, 9, 10 teams that can challenge for a Final Four, Gonzaga being one of them. But, Auburn, Janai Broom, I had my question marks on him last year, but when you watch him in Maui, he's expanded his game again. You always knew he was a dunker, a rebounder, shot blocker. He's added more to his game, and the consistency has been there to start this season. But I really like Pettiford. Chad Baker-Mazzara has been great on the wing. With his length and athleticism and having been at Auburn now for a couple of years, he understands what Bruce Pearl wants. And their offense is the only one in the country right now that is playing at a higher efficiency level than Gonzaga. Other team that I like, Alabama. Yeah, they lost in the Players era. But they've got Player of the Year type candidate in Mark Sears he can go for 30 any night just with the way that they play, the freedom that Coach Nate Oates gives him, and then his skill level. He can go for 30 any day. But the question mark now for them becomes Latrell Wrightsell Jr. tore his Achilles, and he'll be out for the season. And I thought he was a guy that gave him a lot of pop on the wing defensively, get out in transition. He was starting to show the ability to shoot it from the perimeter a little bit. So that's a big loss. And Grant Nelson and Mark Sears are going to have a lot on their shoulders to continue to play at a high level. Iowa State played really well in Maui. They're another team that I think, they don't have the pedigree of a Kansas or a pedigree of some of these other programs, but they are really good. Their backcourt in Lipsy and Keyshawn Gilbert are very good. Defensively, they're going to get after you. Their whole team's going to get after you on that end of the floor, but they can push it from defense to offense as well as just about anybody in the country, including Gonzaga. Kansas, clearly they're number one team in the country, but they're more than just Hunter Dickinson. DeJuan Harris seems like he's been there forever. Rylan Griffin, the transfer from Alabama, I think has been a terrific add, and they've got experience this year. Last year, they had some injuries. I don't think the experience came together necessarily as well as they wanted, but KJ Adams is also playing well for them. Tennessee is a team that you didn't hear a ton about them coming into the non-conference or coming into the season, but they're clearly a top 5 team right now. Offensively, they are unbelievably good. They space you, they attack you. I wouldn't say they're a great shooting team, but they're good enough to keep you honest. And then it opens up those driving angles. And defensively, they're very good. Physical, close down the gaps, pressure you, make things difficult. One potential downfall for them is the size of their backcourt. Zakai Ziegler, one of their best players, their point guard's only at 5'9". And me having been a smaller point guard, I don't like to get too wrapped up in size if you have a true impact on the game. So that's just something to keep an eye out in regards to Tennessee throughout the rest of the season. I think Kentucky, who we spotlighted because of the matchup with Gonzaga earlier in the episode, I think they're a team that clearly has shown early this season that you've got to at least consider them for a Final Four. Mark Pope's got them playing with a lot of pride, a lot of emotion, and a lot of freedom with discipline on the offensive end. And a lot of times people say, well, they play fast. They just go. Well, they do, but they also do it within discipline, understanding, setting up your cuts, coming to the point of the split action where neither guy gets out of it too soon. So there is something to look at with Kentucky in regards to how they play. A couple other teams I think have a legitimate shot. Houston, I know they've lost 3 games on the season now, but LJ Cryer is a tremendous player. Defensively, they're as good as they get. I think Marquette, Dwayne Jones had a triple-double earlier this season. They're very good. They are now creeped into the top 10. And then Duke. I mean, for all the talk and the attention placed on Cooper Flagg, and rightfully so, because he's a probable top 1 pick at number 3 pick at the absolute worst. He gets the bulk of the attention, but what you don't see is Con Knippel's tremendous. Malawach on the interior anchors that defense. They're number 1 in the country in defensive efficiency. They have size across the board. They're active. They protect the rim. They pressure you. It's just a matter of once their offense gets caught up to their defense, they're going to be a complete juggernaut this season. So thanks again for checking out the Bulldog broadcast on the field of 68. Don't forget to check out if you've got landscape needs of any kind, site preparation, road construction. Reach out to Kip at McGilvery Environmental. Again, Eastern Washington, Northern Idaho, Western Montana. You need something done, reach out to Kip and his team, and they'll take care of you. So thanks again for listening. We'll catch up with you next week after the Kentucky game, which I'm expecting in Seattle Climate Pledge Arena. 90% Gonzaga fans. Should be a tremendous environment. 2 years ago, that game against UConn, where unfortunately Gonzaga lost, I wasn't at the game, but heard it was one of the best environments for a neutral site game in quite some time. So take care, and we'll see you again really soon.